We've seen ever more ludicrous polls in the last few weeks. Reports of Biden with a 20-point, 30-point lead have been commonplace. We've always been critical of them, and most conservatives have been critical of them too. But here at Political, we decided to analyse these seemingly wrong polls, and what we found is the poll is 100% overrepresenting Democrats. Over the next few minutes, my co-host Yayan is going to break down one of these polls for you. He's going to analyse it. He's going to deliver the proof to you that the polls are wrong. Not only that, Trump is beating Biden. This is Political. And please do subscribe and like if you do enjoy this content, and do share it. Over the next few days, we're going to be analysing more and more of these polls and showing why mathematically they are 100% wrong. With no further ado.
Hello, everyone. So, as you said, Connor, we're trying to establish, looking at these polls, are they right, are they wrong? A lot of conservatives believe, Trump supporters obviously, believe that they're underrepresenting the silent majority, as we call it. People either ignoring pollsters or lying to them and saying they're voting for Biden when in fact they plan to vote for Trump. So there is no way that we're going to know for sure until the election. But one bit of information that we have right now that can give us some indication is the early voting statistics. Some states show, as a matter of public record, how many ballots have been requested and how many have been returned. And some of them also show and break that down by party affiliation. So whether or not they're registered Democrats or Republicans. So just looking at the most recent polls here, Arizona is one of those states that does that. They provide the data of mail-in ballots returned based upon party affiliation. So if we have a look at this poll and have a look at one of the questions they asked here, said, have you already voted by mail or absentee? Or how do you plan to vote? Of those that claim to be Democrats, 31% said they have already voted. And 15% of Republicans say that they have already voted by mail or absentee. So, if we look at two figures here. One, the number of registered Republicans and Democrats that there are in Arizona. And secondly, the number of ballots that have been returned by Democrats and Republicans, we can actually work out this number for real, not for what the poll is saying, what the people are telling the pollster, but the actual real number. And if we take this, the 1.4 million, roughly, registered Republicans that there are, and find a percentage of how many of them have already voted now, the 157,000, it works out that around 12% of Republicans, registered Republicans, have already voted in Arizona. If we do the same with Democrats, it works out around 20% of Democrats have already voted. So, if we look at the figures that the poll is showing, the Republicans are overrepresented by 3%, and the Democrats are overrepresented by 11%. So 31 to 20%, or 15% to the actual figure of 12%. Now, you would expect some lag, right, where people have said to the pollster, yes, I've returned my ballot, but that ballot hasn't been processed. It hasn't traveled back to the clerk or whoever it is that does it, that processes it. And so the actual data hasn't been established and uploaded onto the official figures. But you would expect that underrepresentation is going to be similar across the board, regardless, right? Because the mail, we like to assume anyway, that the Democrats' ballots don't get there faster than the Republican ones, right? So, but...
Never know.
Yeah, you never know. So, the Democrats are being more overrepresented in this poll than Republicans. Now, if we swung this, basically, there's only two reasons why that could be. The reason one is that Republicans who have already voted are pretending to be Democrats, or Democrats are pretending that they've already voted. Now, listen, it could be a combination of both, or one of those, just one of those things, or predominantly one of those things. I would imagine, though, and I'll tell you why, I would imagine that it's mostly Republicans pretending to be Democrats. The reason why, if you look at the actual sampling here, they sampled 1,086 people, and of those, 334 said that they were Democrats. Well, compared to 322 Republicans. If you actually look at the data, there are more registered Republicans than Democrats in Arizona. So this data isn't random. I mean, they may have attempted to make it random, but they reached more Democrats, or more people who said they're Democrats. And it just so happens that that sway kind of adds up a little bit to the sway that we see here from the overrepresentation in the number that have said that they voted. What that tells us, what I can kind of ascertain from that, speculate, is that the Republicans here are actually being underrepresented by about 3.5%, and Democrats overrepresented by about 3.5%. If you take that swing, obviously apply it to the whole state, based upon this poll, that means that Trump is winning by 4 points, which coincidentally is how many he won by in 2016. So the poll, it would seem, is overrepresenting the Democrats here, Connor.
Okay. So just to be a little clear, and just so we can spell it out for you, the viewer at home, poll is wrong. Trump is in the lead. The numbers are eerily similar to 2016. Is that what you're telling us, Yayan?
That's what it looks like, yes.
Perfect. And Yayan had to explain that one to me 5 times before before we recorded. It's amazing to see all this proof. This is what we thought of all along, isn't it? I mean, if you look at the dynamics driving these kinds of disparities in the numbers, I mean, we're look at the shy conservative vote, for example. You mentioned that Republicans are pretending to be Democrats. Of course, because in a society where you can get fired for expressing support for Donald Trump, where you have the possibility of armed left-wing groups, Antifa, for example, targeting voters for the greater good as they see it, of course you're not going to tell anybody that you're a Donald Trump voter, are you? You?
No, and this is it. And listen, we see this all over the world. At least, listen, we see it in Europe. People who vote for right-wing parties lie to pollsters. They tell them they're voting for left wings. And we have suspected that maybe that shy conservative vote, shy right-wing vote, whatever you want to call it, silent majority, may be amplified here with Donald Trump, because never has a candidate been so vilified by the press, and never has supporters of a mainstream candidate been so vilified by the... You might expect this for some fringe, supporters of some fringe, radical group, of the obviously like racist or communist or whatever, like just, the real fringes of the political spectrum.
Like
neo-Nazis.
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, neo-Nazis or Marxists or whatever, right? You would expect that kind of vilifying from the press for those for supporters of those, but you wouldn't expect it for a mainstream candidate, right? So what you're seeing here is potentially that similar suppression in the polls of Donald Trump's vote as you would see in the UK for the BNP, who aren't really still around anymore, but they were back in the day. And when you think about it in that regard, it makes sense. Like, this is a big swing. We're talking about from Biden being ahead by 3 to Trump being ahead by 4. That's what it looks like when you apply this swing. So it's no real surprise to me in that regard.
Absolutely. And this kind of has an impact. You mentioned as well that Democrats might be saying they voted when they haven't. But it's actually the same dynamic that that feeds into that, isn't it? Because if you look at what the left wing has been saying for the last few months, certainly since the Black Lives Matter movement, it's not enough to be an anti-racist. You have to go and be more, don't you? It's not enough not to have voted for Donald Trump. You have to have voted for Joe Biden if you are to meet their standard of integrity and moral good.
Yeah,
So
and
for me, sorry, go on.
No, I just wanted to say, and obviously, there is a possibility that this is actually Democrats lying to pollsters to say that they've already voted. Like maybe they feel some pressure because they feel the pressure of like, oh yeah, you've already voted for Biden, haven't you? You know, like you say, because Trump's so evil. That's a possibility, but just when you look at the way that the weighting and the sampling has gone for Republicans here, it doesn't make any sense. It just seems like it's more of the other.
Absolutely. And in fact, thinking about it, we actually see that a lot for causes, for very polarizing causes. Look at Brexit, for example. Both Remainers and Leavers didn't turn out in expected numbers in the Brexit referendum, even though it was a completely polarized scenario. Why? Because some people just don't want to vote. They don't have the time. They don't have whatever. They don't have to turn out and vote, but they will still say, because they are so polarized and engaged with the issue, and they know they can't sit on the fence, they will still say that they have voted. And that appears to be the case with the Democrats, as you've just proved.
Yeah. Like I say, it could be a combination of both of those. I think until we see, now that the data for that voting statistics in terms of the ballots has starting to kind of come through now, the early voting has been going on for a little while, we can start to look and analyze more of these polls, particularly YouGov, who do a lot of questionnaires and ask a lot of different questions and break it down. And we'll be able to get an idea of this. Maybe this is just one outlier in this poll. Maybe this is a trend across multiple states. I don't know. So, guys, if you have enjoyed this video and you want to see more content like this, analyzing the polls, breaking it down, trying to kind of establish and weed out new data that perhaps other people have missed, or perhaps it's right there in front of us, but the media just doesn't report on it. If you want to see more stuff like that, make sure to subscribe, click the bell, because we're going to be doing a lot more content like this, I should think, between now and the election, just to give you a bit of an idea of what is actually going on. So, as always, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.